9:59 and a quorum of the board is present. The State Board of Education meeting of February 12th, 2019 is called to order. Thank everyone for navigating the wintry roads to be here today. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and the order of priority. Are there any items that board members would like to add or delete from today's agenda? Judy.
I would like to make a motion to add, after legislative update, a resolution to give the board president authority to work with the Attorney General's office on the letter grade statute.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to add a resolution to our agenda under Section K, which is state and federal legislative updates. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, then may I please have a vote? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Now may,
Oh, you want a motion to approve the
yes,
agenda
now
as
may I
amended?
please have a
Support.
motion to
Or I'll
approve
move
the
that.
agenda as amended?
I'll move that.
All right. I have a motion and support. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. So at this time, Marilyn, would you please introduce the members of the State Board of Education?
Yes, thank you. I'm Marilyn Schneider. I'm the State Board Executive, and as we go around the table, starting at my left, you've just been listening to the Interim State Superintendent, Sheila Alice, and she's also chairperson of the board. Cassandra Albridge is on the way. She's president of the board. The board's vice president, and Cassandra lives in Rochester Hills. Pamela Pugh is the board's vice president. She lives in Saginaw. The board secretary is Michelle Fecto, who lives in Detroit. Nikki Snyder, board member. She lives in Dexter. Tiffany Tilley, on her way from Southfield. She's a board member. Laura Chang, this year's Michigan Teacher of the Year from Vicksburg Public Schools. Representing Governor Whitmer, Josh Nair from the Policy Office. Judy Pritchett, board member, and she's from Washington Township. And Lupe Ramos-Montini, I believe, is on the phone. She's board member from Grand Rapids. Lupe, are you there? She's going to join by phone. And Tom McMillan is seated next to me. He is from Oakland Township, and he is the board's treasurer. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. And now we will introduce new MDE staff members, starting with Kyle. Would you please introduce your new member of your division?
Yes, thank you, Sheila. I'd like to, my pleasure to introduce Scott Martin from Health and Nutrition Services. Scott, can you just share a little bit about your role at the department?
Sure. Hi.
Hi.
So I was in education for the last 19 years. I was a teacher. That's where I come from. And I'm in the Health and Nutrition unit right now, and mostly what I'm looking at is culture and climate in the schools. Most of my experience has been working with MTSS. I've been at 3 districts. Plans over the last couple of years in the middle school at the STEM. I've been able to see a lot of things. I was also a board member of Michigan ACB for 6 years, so I've been a lot of how the state operates. Also work closely with my colleague now and still Michigan ACB, trying to figure out how we can provide the physical supports, the nutrition supports, the emotional supports, all the different kinds of supports that we need to access the curriculum. As I'm looking forward and thinking about equity and access across the state for all the parts that they need for their child to be successful learners. Right now I'm just trying to learn, so thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And Scott, you also have a new member of your division. Would you please introduce her to us?
Sure. So I'm joined by Cindy Keller. Cindy, can you stand, please? Thank you. Cindy is coming to us from state government, from the Office of the Internal Audit Services Department, where she worked as an auditor, and is currently joining us in special ed in the program finance as an auditor there as well. Had a chance to meet Cindy last week. Also has an interesting background with some engineering experience.
Yeah.
at Delphi, where she did some testing and analysis during that time. So, Cindy, welcome. And anything you'd like to share with the group now?
Thank you, Cindy. And Bill Pearson, I believe you also have a staff member to introduce today, please.
Introduce Kimberly Davis. Years in education.
Good morning, everyone. I have 32 years of educational experience. I was a teacher, an assistant principal, and a principal and academic director as well. And I'm happy to be a part of my wonderful team, Office of Partnership Districts, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Do we have any other new employees here today? Okay, seeing none, let's please welcome our 3 new employees. Welcome. So we're moving on to public participation information. If you plan to offer public comment at today's meeting, please complete a form and get it to Marilyn. Forms are available on the table outside the boardroom. They must be submitted prior to the beginning of that portion of the meeting devoted to public comment. Public comment will begin immediately following the lunch break, and that is scheduled for approximately 1:30 today. Please be here at that time to make sure that you have an opportunity to comment. The first item on the Committee of the Whole agenda today is the presentation of the Perkins 5 transition year. This is a presentation on the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Act of 2006 as amended. The purpose of Perkins 5 is to develop the academic knowledge, technical and employability skills of secondary education students and post-secondary education students who elect to enroll in career and technical education programs. The transition year of 2019-2020 provides the state with an adequate amount of time to develop the Perkins 5 state plan. Today's presentation is an information item only. The next steps include to finalize the Perkins 5 state plan for the 2020 through 2023, and then staff anticipates bringing the plan back to the board for approval either during the March or April State Board of Education meeting. Our presenters today are Scott Kinischek, our Deputy Superintendent of the P20 Systems and Student Transitions Division, Brian Piles, Director of the Office of Career and Technical Education, and Marcia Black-Watson, who is the Division Administrator of Talent and Economic Development Department of Michigan. Welcome.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you. Appreciate it. So as Sheila said, I'm joined by Marcia Black-Watson from the Department of Talent and Economic Development, and Dr. Brian Piles from our own Office of Career and Technical Education here at the department. And they're going to spend some time this morning talking about Perkins 5 as a transition year, and perhaps more importantly, the aligned and coherent work that's going on not only with the department, but across agencies in partnership with the Department of Talent and Economic Development. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marcia and Brian.
Okay, thank you both, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. We had our Perkins federal legislation approved last summer, which was a really exciting time for us across the country with all of the movement and all of the focus on workforce development and career pathways and helping children begin their experience in high school, moving through post-secondary. And so it was just it's a great time for us in career and technical education. And also when you start to look at some of the economic indicators of employment and wages, it's really good for our citizens and our state and across our country. And so we are going to be presenting you in the next 30 days with the transition plan for Perkins. And the transition plan basically provides us with 1 year to go through and develop what do we want Perkins 5 to look like. And we'll be presenting that to you as well at a future date. But what kind of changes do we want to see in the way that we drive career and technical education in the state of Michigan? And then that new state plan that we will be presenting to you later in the year will cover years 2020 through 2023. But this plan here is designed by the federal government, is basically just for us to continue our good work while we start to plan our future work. The purpose of the act is for the development of academic knowledge, technical, and employability skills of secondary education students and post-secondary education students who elect to enroll in career and technical education programs. You'll see through our presentation today that it really is a combination of supporting students in our schools with their academic knowledge and the application of the math, English, science, and social studies that students need relative to the occupation that they're studying, and how to apply that knowledge in contextualized academics. And that carries through into post-secondary education, as well as really working on the technical skills. What technical skills are our employers looking for students that exit these programs? And then moving forward to the general employability and soft skills. And, so many research studies don't talk about the technical skills, but they talk about those basic employability skills of someone coming to work, a willingness to learn new things, a willingness to be on time, stay the complete day, work their schedule, and be an active participator in their environment. That they come with some technical skills, but they really like us to focus on the whole employee. We have definitions for both secondary and post-secondary programs. I'll talk about the secondary definitions, and Marcia will be talking about the post-secondary definitions. I had mentioned the academic and technical skills. And when you look at the academic and technical skills, many of our career and technical education programs meet the graduation requirements in the Michigan Merit Curriculum. And many of our programs offer those embedded within that program. And then we also, all of our programs, what really makes career and technical education unique is that all programs have some form of a hands-on laboratory. Whether it is in our agri-science programs and you're actually, out in the farmland, or you're in a greenhouse, or we're talking about our students that are in our hospitals, and they go into learning labs in our hospitals. And many of our programs have partnerships with their local hospitals where the students are actually training in the same simulation labs as employees of those hospitals. Work-based learning also is something that makes us unique in crossing the threshold. Crossing the threshold means that a student leaves the school program and goes into an employer's workplace and applies the skills that they're learning. And those are such important skills. And as I reflect back on my time as a career and technical education student at the Oakland Technical Campus in Clarkston, Michigan, I took both agri-science and accounting finance CTE programs. And I remember very fondly the experience of my agri-science teacher who was teaching us landscaping skills and greenhouse management skills. And she taught us how to start our own business. And so in the summer of my 11th grade year, my 12th grade year, I was doing contracted work, laying patio bricks for people, doing general landscape design and implementation. And I was a 16-year-old. And think of those skills that teacher taught me. I reflect back on those and always remember those very fondly. And then in my senior year, crossing the threshold, I went to an accounting finance program, because if you're going to have your own business, you need to know how to account for it. And I had an experience, if you remember, Perry Drug Stores. And Perry Drug's corporate headquarters was in Waterford, Michigan. And I had the opportunity to go there and work in an office setting. I was so excited when they gave me my own space and my own phone. And it was just kind of a different type of an experience from the agri-science work that I also really liked. But it was just a great way for me to then become connected with careers and what do I really want to do. And so crossing the threshold is an important component of a CTE program. And in student leadership, our career and technical student organizations. And if you look at DECA, or you look at Skills USA or FFA, and those experiences for our students to go and learn leadership skills along with applying their knowledge at competitions. And it's a great learning experience. I had the opportunity to spend 10 years as a DECA advisor, as a teacher at Niles High School. And I talk to my students still on somewhat of an infrequent yet frequent basis. And what they learned from DECA and who they are today, with them being in their 30s and early 40s, and you see their accomplishments, but they always lend back to that experience when they started learning their business skills, and that was through DECA, and those are such great fond memories as well. And so you look at a CTE quality program, and there are many components to it that really help develop our young people and help them as they start to navigate their future. Marcia?
So good morning, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here to talk about CTE programs and Carl Perkins 5. So for the high-quality program definition for post-secondary, it is very important that we have curriculum that is really designed with employer input to prepare students for both education, advancement, but as well as employment readiness. And I think it's very appropriate that the office that I'm responsible for is called Industry Engagement. And we oversee a number of work-based learning programs that are really designed by employers for employers. And certainly working with our post-secondary institutions to ensure that there are quality programs to really feed into those work-based learning programs is crucial to ensure that we have a talent pool that's prepared for today and tomorrow and the demands of industry. So in this definition, we see that it's very important that there's an integration of secondary and post-secondary education. And all of the programs that we see as far as new programs, we want to make sure that there is preparation across K through 12 that then articulates into post-secondary. We want to see that non-duplicative progression of the courses of skills, and we want to ensure that there is industry input into that progression so that at the end of their post-secondary experience, there is the opportunity to go on to additional academic programs that may lead to a bachelor's degree, or that there is career readiness. And oftentimes we see that as a part of participating in these programs, whether they lead to certificates or to degrees, that we have industry representatives and employers that are actually waiting for the students to actually go into the world of work. And we see that because there is very coherent and rigorous content that, again, is contributed through the standards, but also through the input from educators as well as industry. One of the things that we promote through our workforce development boards, there are 16 across the state, are career education advisory councils. And this provides an opportunity for workforce developers, for educators, for industry representatives, and others that really support that education experience to provide information about what is the labor market as it stands today, what are the in-demand, high-wage opportunities for individuals as they are going through these high-quality programs. And then we also want to make sure that at the end of this experience, that these programs lead to industry-recognized credentials. And these are credentials at all level. We want to make sure, again, that there's a progression of opportunity. So we certainly support and encourage stackable credentials, whether those are certificates, whether they are coming through industry supported organizations, and we really want to make sure that there is that level of quality as these students have their post-secondary experience. So we have seen many examples of these programs providing very good outcomes as it relates to the students that are in our post-secondary CTE programs. One that comes to mind is really through Macomb Community College. We look to see working. They have a number of programs that really provide feeders to the big three or the auto industry and their tier suppliers. There is opportunities in these programs as they are actually going to school. There's an on-off schedule, so many hours or weeks that are actually spent in the classroom, and so many hours a week that are actually spent with the employer. So when that individual student comes through the program, they actually not only graduate with an associate's degree, but they also graduate with at least 2 years' experience in that field. And so that is really one of the outcomes and one of the examples of a high-quality post-secondary program.
And as you can see, the high school component and the post-secondary component pathway together nicely with a lot of the same requirements and expectations for rigor and academic and technical skills and employability skills. And then when they leave Marcia's programs, ready to be employed here in the state of Michigan and have a nice living wage for themselves and their families. Our secondary programs are aligned around the 17 career clusters, with the most recent cluster being the energy cluster that was created in partnership with Talent Investment Agency. And Marcia we were just reflecting this morning on the strength of that committee that engaged employers and governmental employees and school employees in the development of that training program for our students in secondary and post-secondary. We're really proud of that. We feel as though it's a model for development of working with business and industry. So you can see all the clusters that we work under there. So that we're clear, there's two different state agencies, Marcia and I. We work together as a team, and that we deliver here at the Department of Education, the secondary side of career and technical education, and then we deliver the post-secondary side over in talent and economic development, specifically in Marcia's office. We also would like to bring your attention to how each of our agencies align to the goals of our agencies. And when we think of the Department of Education and we think of the top 10 and 10, there are two strategic goals that are really supported in the Perkins legislation. Although when you look through all of the goals and strategies of the top 10 and 10, career and technical education is throughout. There are so many things that we touch in our top 10 and 10 goals. Specifically with Strategic 1, it's about building that strong relationship with business, labor, and higher education. It's drawing that connection from all of the prenatal work that we do, through our elementary grades, through our middle grades, into our high schools, taking our children to post-secondary. And we really support that in our Perkins work. And when you look at TED, Talent Economic Development, and Marcia, it really does maximize lifelong learning and success as they exit Marcia's programs. And then our other strategic goal that I feel like we specifically support is strategic goal number 6. And that is our partnership goal with our job providers and our community colleges and our higher education institutions to make sure we have a qualified workforce. And there are so many different ways that we support those partnerships, from our local career and technical education programs in our local comprehensive high schools and our career and technical education county centers, where we have local advisory committees that are comprised of educators and business people from those local communities working and engaging together. And then Marcia had mentioned the CACs, the Career
Education Advisory Councils.
that we work with, and we have 16 of those, as she had mentioned. And we have representation at our intermediate school district levels, representing our counties and regions, and working with those employers and engaging with those employers. And then Marcia will probably mention our work with our state level agencies that we do as well, and partner with those business and industry leaders. And so there's a lot of layers of connection in our system that supports strategic goal number 6. Marcia?
So the Talent and Economic Development Department, particularly as it relates to employment and training, we really have 5 broad strategic focus areas. But there's 2 of those areas that really align with Perkins 5 and with the partnership that our agency and our department has with the Department of Education. And that's particularly core focus number 2, which is about growing our existing talent development programs and services to really enhance the skills of Michigan's workforce. And education plays a very significant and crucial role in that area of focus. And specifically, core focus number 5, which is strengthening our career and technical education focus. There are some new areas in Perkins 5 that we are very, very excited and encouraged about that's really going to bode well with these areas of focus and ensuring that we have quality career and technical education programs. And I just want to mention a few of those. One is Perkins 5 encourages a number of areas, and it's not as far as a mandate, but it's very strong encouragement. And Brian and I are going to work with those encouragements to make sure that they are built into current and future programs. In-demand industry sectors and occupations, ensuring that programs are specifically focused on that in-demand, high-demand, and high-skilled or high-wage occupations. I mentioned before, industry-recognized credentials, certificates, and associates. We have to ensure that the experience that students have, both from secondary and post-secondary, is going to address the skill demands and competency demands of industry. We want to make sure that there's an integration of work-based learning, the experience of working in the facilities and working with industry and employers as a part of the educational experience. And then career exploration. As we see students making decisions about what career paths they will take, to ensure that they have the information that is sufficient. And a lot of times it really takes that career exploration. There's lots of web-based online tools to provide information, but there's also the importance of having a hands-on and site experience. And we have seen a number of efforts across the state that have been very successful in doing that, such as Career Quest. And that is bringing together industry representatives that actually set up exhibits that are hands-on, and it shows those students what it's like to actually work in an industry and work in a certain occupation. It gives them a taste of what it's like. And so that helps them in making their decisions. And then again, those secondary and post-secondary connections. We really, as I said before, we want to see a articulated progression of education and also work-based learning that will equate to industry recognized credentials and degrees. So we see that across our programs, across Brian's programs and across post-secondary programs, that we typically meet our federal performance measures. But also, there are some areas of key measures that we have at the department that we are very, very focused on. work-based learning, and that's bridging that classroom and world of work that's leading to education and employment outcomes for our secondary and post-secondary participants. Another key measure are the industry-recognized credentials, and that's a strategy that improves that instruction, and it really signals to employers that students are coming out of these programs and they are ready for to go into occupations and careers. And then, of course, it's very important that there is job placement, and job placement that really leads to self-sustaining careers and opportunities for lifelong learning and career advancement along their pathways.
Thank you, Marcia. So moving to our transition plan outline, you'll be receiving that application, as mentioned, sometime between March and April. And we're going to have 4 sections in that transition plan outline that are listed on the PowerPoint. And basically, it's about continuing the work that we do, continuing the outcomes that we have as we start to plan that 5th year, or Perkins 5, excuse me. And when we look at the transition plan, there are 2 sections that aren't required. Plan development, because that will be for Perkins 5, and you'll see that in the Perkins 5 plan. And accountability for results, because we'll be developing our new accountability measures, and then state-determined performance levels. And so those are pieces that will be in the next plan, but not part of the transition plan that you'll be receiving. And then thank you for the time today to present with an overview of our current technical education, secondary, post-secondary programs, and giving you the highlights of those, and also letting you know what's coming your way. That when this PowerPoint was developed, the federal government has made some tweaks to the guidance, and they put out for more guidance, and so it changes our dates just a little bit, but we're really looking probably at the month of April for the approval. But as soon as we get our final guidance, we will be sure that we get the plan in your hands so that you have adequate time to review. So thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Scott and Brian and Marcia. And now we will turn to board members for comments or questions. Tom?
I guess I heard a lot about demands of industry. So you feel that the government schools should be meeting the demands of industry?
So we certainly consider our work and our efforts to be demand-driven, because at the end of the day, regardless of what program, whether it's Perkins 5, post-secondary, whether it's work-based learning, whether it's employment and training opportunities that we have through the Federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, we want to see our participants and students in self-sustaining and family-sustaining occupations. And so, who creates those jobs? That's industry, that's employers. And we provide and want to continue to provide opportunities for the employers to provide guidance as to what are those skills and what are those competencies that are needed, not only for the jobs today. And we know that if you look at the labor market and what we are aspiring to impact, particularly with the unemployment rate, we have a low unemployment rate, but we still have hundreds of thousands of occupations going through 2024 that are not going to be filled. 811,000 jobs are estimated to be available through 2024. So how do we make sure, as an opportunity to shore up our economy, that we are preparing a talent pool for those particular occupations? In the economic condition that we see today, we see companies that are struggling to actually take on new work or to sustain themselves in the state because of that talent gap that we have, or skills gap. So it's very important to do that.
Okay, and money-wise, we're talking about, it looks like the reauthorization was about 1.2 billion, so maybe 36 million or something for the state, somewhere in that range, or
Yes.
something about that. So we're not talking, we're talking about, you know, $10 a family or so, 20 bucks, 15 bucks a family. This is all voluntary, right? A district doesn't have to, or a school doesn't have to do any of this, right, if they don't want to.
Correct.
We've had plenty of people, Lou Glazer and others, that have said really, you know, pointed out that most jobs that are going to be available in 2024 haven't even been developed. Or, you know, so I mean, government typically isn't very good at figuring out what's needed in the future. And so I just want to make sure we're not, you know, that a lot of people argue we shouldn't be honing in on career clusters because odds are they won't be here or they're going to be radically changed. What we need to do is give them well-rounded liberal arts education, and so that they're very versatile. I think Lou talks about rock climbing as opposed to going up a ladder. There will be no ladders. They'll all be being able to be flexible. So it's pretty well known. I'm kind of skeptical of a lot of this stuff and would really prefer just kind of, because it's all done, you know, the time that this is done means that there's other things that can't be done when they're focusing on some of these. So I'm a little concerned about some of the more broad liberal arts education that students could be getting that they may not be. And I know there's choices and all that, but I still am skeptical. And also, you know, I'll be interested to hear what y'all come up with, because as I understand it, the new law is radically changed. A huge overhaul in Perkins 5 last year that allows states more flexibility. So I'd like to know what the change is from last year to how are we taking advantage of the more flexibility that's in the law.
And we will certainly present that to you when we talk about the Perkins 5 plan. And from my perception, although they use the word a radical overhaul, to me it's not really. When you look at it, the changes aren't that radical. When we look at what we're allowed to do, they changed some of the grade levels at which you can fund particular activities through Perkins, but there weren't any sweeping changes that are going to require institutional changes at our secondary or post-secondary institutions.
And for the record, 36 million is a lot of money. I wasn't saying it's not a lot of money, but I mean, you know, as far as influencing a lot, it's about, I think, $10 or so a family in Michigan, so $10, $15.
Okay, thank you, Tom. And then Pam and Michelle and Laura
So I guess, you know, and
Nikki. I'll go right down the table.
And I think to Tom's point, you know, for me, I just want us to always, you know, make sure that from this department standpoint, we're always thinking about students and making sure that they are not just thinking of jobs, not the ones of today, but thinking of careers and making sure that we're keeping in our focus that we're trying to develop students that will have meaningful lives and careers, and not as concerned with filling jobs. Of course, that is a concern. Our economy is a concern, and making sure that we are able to attract business and that our students are able to fill that. But at the same time, we're at the forefront. We want to make sure that we're looking at the well-being of our students. And I guess a concern of mine, and I don't know, a couple of things with the U.S. Department of Ed, and I don't know where they are now. I haven't followed with the combining of Labor Department and the Education Department. It's a concern. And I don't know if anyone can speak to that. I don't know how our communities of color are partaking in these programs, especially given some of our historical issues that we've had with tracking students and not preparing them for careers, but preparing them for jobs. And then my other question, and I think to Dr. Piles, some of your experiences, are we promoting, is there someone that's promoting paid internships for students? Because back in the day, you know, those are some of the things that we were, that was a wonderful way that my friends and I got an opportunity to learn how to work within the within the workforce, and we were paid to do the work as well as to learn how to build skills.
So starting with your third question, we are working with local school districts and intermediates on work-based learning experiences that you described, which include the paid internship. We look at work-based learning as being progressively intensive, and which means it begins with guest speakers in classrooms and job fairs and career fairs and job shadow to unpaid internship to paid internship. So there's a progression, and we do really reinforce the need for work-based learning. And then the last legislative cycle, it was legislated that all students in grades 6 through 12 have work-based learning experiences each year. And so we have legislation that's also supporting and moving that component forward so that students can see how what they're learning how it connects to careers. And so we are working on that, and we provided some additional guidance and recommendation documents to the field.
And if I could say for post-secondary as well, paid internships, apprenticeships, while you're earning while you're learning, we have great examples of that, and it is strongly encouraged in our policy as well for post-secondary, and there's a number of examples.
And so when you also go to your second question about communities of color in the support, my staff here went and spent 2 days down with Detroit Community Public Schools, working with their career and technical education staff. And some of the work that's going on in their technical centers, and we were at Randolph, and as they are refurbishing those technical campuses with their partnerships with business and industry, and the outside resources that are coming in, and the simulated welding machines and manufacturing machines that exist are absolutely impressive, which are giving more children access to that experience virtually before they see it hands-on. And so we are doing a lot to support that work. In particular, I was in Saginaw just last week for Career and Technical Education Month, and they had invited me to be their keynote speaker. And so it was a great opportunity to be in Saginaw City and Saginaw County schools talking about career and technical education and the programming. In fact, Saginaw just passed their first vocational education millage, and we are so excited that they're going to be able to expand their programming at the county level for not only Saginaw City schools, but all of the constituent districts in the county. They really have some strong leadership up there with their superintendent and CTE director, and so we're doing as much as we can to continue to support that, as well as working with the equity committee here and looking at career and technical education. And our Perkins 5 plan is also going to expand out from just special populations to also talking about equity and access.
I'll just say with the Saginaw, I will be watching closely because that went from the city schools to county-wide. And so I'll be watching very closely to make sure that we're still keeping up with, that it's not a disadvantage to those who are part of the public schools.
Yeah, and from the design that they have, it probably will really support all schools in the county because they're going to be using a large portion of that funding to support the technical campus right there in the city. So it should yield positive results for everyone. And will you repeat your first question for me, please?
I think you got to some of the, I think you spoke to the issue. It was around the fact that we're focused on the students, not jobs here. And then I did ask about, and I don't know if the labor and the education department, and any thoughts on the merger of the two.
I don't have any current information on that merger. I haven't heard anything about it in several months.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Pam. And then we'll move to Michelle.
Thank you for your work, and I'm excited about the opportunities that CTE can provide in the community. Although I do share some of the concerns that were expressed by Tom and Pam. So there's a couple of things that kind of hit me. One is, when we talk about our top 10 and 10, our goals, one of them is provide every child access to aligned quality education. So, and a concern that I've heard out in the field is that often two groups, kids, I'm wondering how many kids that are free reduced lunch, do you track that? Is that part of the mission, is to go where the need is greatest, or is it to go where the communities call for it? Or, so like I live in Detroit and I've been to, I have two kids who went to A. Philip Randolph program. It provided some supplemental stuff for them, and although it unfortunately didn't pan out, but maybe now that it's revamped, it'll be better. But I'm wondering how many people, students that get jobs are folks that are high poverty, or then another group of special needs is, or special populations is special ed. And because I've heard some criticisms that there's not a modification of the curriculum because of the way the system is set up. And I don't know if this new flexibility will give us, allow the state to include more kids in a modified curriculum. So not just letting special ed kids have access to apply, but actually modifying it to meet their needs. So for instance, I have a child with autism, and he might not be able to be, I don't know, a hairdresser, but he could certainly clean up and do stocking and things like that, and cosmetology or something. And so, but my understanding is in order to get the money or to look like you're doing well under the grant, you have to have kids actually graduate and go through the entire program successfully. Mm-hmm. Is that right? So that discourages, so that kind of discourages including, kids who might not make it all the way through, but still gain some good knowledge from it. So I'm wondering so in order to meet our number one goal, which is access for all, if that's looking at these two different special populations like low income, where the need is highest for these job connections, how many of those kids, is that a priority? And if not, or if it's been a difficult challenge, what can we do to improve it? And the same thing for kids with disabilities, because their unemployment rate is through the roof. So are we doing something to address the needs of these special populations who really need these job connections, or are we skimming for employers? And so they get the best people that they would have gotten, and done job training anyway. So that's my concern.
And we certainly, in my experience, from being a county director of career and technical education and working on some of the same concerns that you have raised, want to provide leadership so that all children have an opportunity to maximize their potential and their learning experience. The federal Perkins funds are distributed to the regions by the Title I formula. And so here at the Department of Education, we don't have flexibility in how we roll those out as by the Title I formula. Mm-hmm. In particular, one thing that we do focus on and with students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, single parents, limited English proficient, migrant status, and non-trad are the areas that we measure to see that we have students in our current technical education programs across the state, and also how are they doing compared to other subgroups when it comes to performance. And so we do recruit those different students with those needs.
How are they
doing? And we track that. When we talk specifically about modifying the curriculum, we can make curricular changes. We just can't make changes to the standards. Mm-hmm. And the standards of delivery. And what we have done, in my experience at the county levels, is where we make that best impact for students with learning disabilities, thinking about our special education transition programs and what can we do locally to create programming so that we are looking at, from a county level, all aspects of industry, because the federal legislation gives us parameters on what we are and are not allowed to fund under the high skill, high wage, high demand occupations and the standards. And so we do provide leadership. I personally provide leadership, working with county directors, and have implemented some programs myself in the past. We will be looking, though, to see within the flexibility what we're able to do and see how far we can take and stretch that rubber band so that we're meeting the needs of all of our children.
So do you have an idea of then how many kids who have been placed in jobs are like free reduced lunch considered in those categories that have been successfully placed?
I can ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll
I'm
find
just
out.
wondering how we're doing with, if that's a goal, because I've heard that it's tended to be, maybe I'm wrong, I could stand corrected, that it's not the populations that really need it the most. And that might not be, anybody's, it might be a systemic problem, and not necessarily, anybody's motive, to do that. And I'm just trying to understand that.
Could I also add that as a part of state leadership, as far as providing professional development and opportunities, those areas that Brian mentioned, there's actually a professional development work group. It's called MASPA. Special populations is in that title. I can't remember what the acronym is.
Michigan Occupational Special Populations
Populations
Education Association.
Oh, wow.
And that is an organization. They come together for professional development to make sure that there is equity and inclusion for all of those individuals that Brian mentioned, that there are programs that really speak to the needs of those populations. And there's an annual conference that is available to provide best practices and to share and practice across the state. And so there really is an emphasis and a focus on it. And I do think Perkins 5 provides an opportunity to really expand on what's been done in the past and gives flexibility in that area.
That would be great.
And I can speak to Michelle from the field. Coming from the field, I was blessed to work in 2 ISDs, both having CTE center programs. And in both, we had a program to do kind of what you talked about. We called it Career Start. And it had students with disabilities. We made modifications to the best that we could for the students to go out into the programs of interest and their ability. So the students may not have spent the whole year in the automotive class, but they might have spent one 3-week segment or 2 3-week segments to learn how to change brakes or to learn how to change oil. And your cosmetology example, we had a young lady who may not be able to be a cosmetologist, but could work the front desk very well and had the skills and abilities to do that. And so at Ingham, it's called Career Start. And we have that there, and we had that a similar type program in Montcalm where we really work to focus on the strengths and abilities of the students to give them the exposure where we can.
And you use Perkins funds for that?
We did. They weren't completers, to your point, but we did it.
Thank you, Michelle. And on to Nikki.
Thank you for your presentation. CTE is definitely special. To me, I got my certified nursing assistant certificate in high school, and it was definitely a good experience. I'm just looking at core focus number 2, grow existing talent development programs. Just a quick question about that. Do you mean serve more students? What are the specific goals that you have within that focus?
Absolutely. So there are a number of programs that really have very successful outcomes as it relates to preparing students for the world of work, but also preparing them to go on to higher academic endeavors as well. And so we always want to make sure that we are building on the services and programs and service delivery structure that we have. But that core focus is really important as it relates to the programs that we have in post-secondary particularly, because those programs would not exist if there weren't those institutions. And we provide Carl Perkins support to the 28 community colleges, 3 public universities that provide 2-year degrees, as well as one tribal college as well. And so we see that in those service delivery of those programs, that it's those public institutions that really provide the majority of training, education and training in those programs. And so we want to make sure that we can continue to expand those programs, that there's greater access and opportunities for as many students and participants as possible, and that we are having good outcomes with them. So that's the core focus.
Do you feel like the budget that you guys have with the Perkins 5 plan is effective in reaching those specific goals?
So I think, as I said earlier, we absolutely continue to meet our federal performance measures, which are very important. It includes, working with non-traditional programs and students, and making sure that individuals that go through the programs are placed, that there are completers, but that's not the total focus. And certainly, if you think about it, there's always a need for additional resources, particularly staff capacity to make sure that the programs are administered properly. But we try to make sure that we have a good return on investment of the funds that we do have in working with the institutions that receive the majority of our allocation.
And Nikki, I can speak from the 25 regions that administer the secondary Perkins, and they do need more Perkins funding. As a prior grant region manager for Region 19, which encompassed 3 different counties and 39 high schools, there were always unmet needs and requests from those districts for additional supports and paraprofessionals and equipment. And so we certainly welcome any increase that we get from the federal government to distribute more money to our locals.
Couple other things. With the next presentation that you guys offer, can you get us that list of high schools high wage are and are not allowed to fund? Like, what are your parameters and boundaries within the Perkins? And then just as a general, I guess, comment on sort of noticing how we discuss things at the table and talent pool versus, how do we view high school students, talent pool versus people who possess skills. I feel like there is a long-term impact on those people who I think we should view as possessing skills versus a talent pool, if you will, not that they aren't a part of one. But I also feel like as we move away from, you said strongly urge paid internships versus having had them just as a way of work, if you will, and then considering long-term student loan debt as they move on into programs, just increased costs of health benefits in those careers. I'm just wondering, are we adequately also preparing these students well and beyond the credentials, the industry recognized credentials they're getting, and the programs we're encouraging them or feeding them into? Do they understand the financial aspect of it for themselves appropriately? Because I think a lot of students are graduating from college just sort of looking back and going, whoa, what just happened here? And precisely what did I sign myself up for? And what does this look like to have a family and to own a home? And so I think that the conversation we're having is a very good conversation, and the goals that you've shared are very good. But I guess my ultimate question is, are these students prepared for real life? Not just part of a talent pool, with a set of skills that reach a specific outcome for an employer. And that's, not just, I think, Pam, you were kind of referring to that, fulfilling life. I think there's specific things that kind of attach to what does that mean and look like. So are we educating them not just on the skills that they need to have to fill that job that they have chosen and that option or pathway that they want to go down, but are they ready for life?
And I guess to speak to, you mentioned college debt and, what is the investment in education? One of the tools that we have provided in the last 2 years is called Pathfinder. And it really provides an opportunity for students, for their parents, for educators to look and to actually study, what are the opportunities for education, and based on the career pathway that student believes they want to take, what are the education options out there? What are the costs of those options? What are the timeframes for that education? And then one of the primary features of Pathfinder is to actually have a return on investment calculator for that student. So what is the cost? And certainly in the programs that are promoted in our agency, we provide subsidies or scholarships. We provide offsets to training to try to assist with those career paths that these students look to take. So we do try to provide tools that will help to inform. I also talked about career exploration and those activities and events to assist those students. And it is about informing, what it takes to go down that career pathway, what's the investment, and what's the return on that investment as well.
And I believe when you look at the Michigan model for career development, and we look at what's expected of our schools with doing career exploration in grades K-6, and we look, or career awareness at K-6, career exploration in middle school and career preparation in high school. And we look at the tools that districts purchase with the majority of them using career cruising, using items like Pathfinder as a secondary source of data for them.
Yes.
Students have that opportunity in their local school district where many of them are going through and doing exploratory type of activities where they look at programs that align with their interests, and whether or not it's a career and technical education program that's available in their region or not that they can go to. But if I want to go into a particular career and they look and they see how much money that you can earn in that career, what the job training is, the tool then takes them to all the post-secondary training institutions with average costs. So we have those tools in place that our schools use in a variety of ways to help our children make decisions. And we just released new guidance on that back in the month of December to our district to document that. I'm really exceptionally proud of the work that our agencies have done, and also with many of our professional partners across the state of Michigan with a lot of engagement so that we had many varied perspectives. And so we do have those pieces in place. And also when you look at the growth of our early middle college programs, and for our children that choose those early middle college programs, they are walking out with little to no debt with their industry credential or their associate's degree or their 60 transferable credits. I think as a state, there are so many things that we've done to help our families. And so then it's incumbent upon the local districts to make sure that those options are well articulated to the children. And so I think that we are working on that.
Thank you, Nikki, and we'll move on to Laura.
Hi. I'm really encouraged to see the education and training career cluster on here, specifically considering CTE as a way to recruit and attract high quality, passionate, talented teachers to our profession. It's really exciting to think about guiding high school students into on this path beginning in high school and extending through college. And I think with the teacher shortage here in Michigan, this is something that I really need to think more about. How can I help with this? How can we work as a team on this? I can't speak to what's happening in all of Michigan, but I know in West Michigan this is really an untapped area. There are programs, nationwide programs like Educators Rising, and I think about 25 states are affiliate, have an affiliate position with that group, and there are others that are similar. And many states allocate Perkins funds for programs like that. So that's just something I wanted to bring up. I'm excited to see it here. I think we have a lot of potential in that area for our teachers.
And it is very exciting because as educators, we want to grow our own educator workforce, and that also ties in with our top 10 and 10. During the 2017-18 school year, we had 48 education and training programs across the state of Michigan. So there are 48 programs where students learn about the teaching profession, and in those programs, typically, they are placed either in an elementary school or a middle school, and that from their education and training instructor, they learn teaching methodology, and then they go practice it in the classroom. And so you're not there just checking off papers and in a teacher's aid, you're actually engaging and saying, do I like this type of work? And do I like this level of engagement? And so, yeah, we do have 48 programs. We had over 2,000 students enrolled last year. And so it's exciting as we need to grow our own, so thank you.
And it's, we have a similar program in Vicksburg, but it's very surface level. And what you described, it's not. That's a little bit more what I've seen and what I've heard about. So I'm excited to think how that could be much deeper and more meaningful to really get those kids hooked to this great work that we do.
Yes, and we can chat offline, and I can give you a
Great.
couple of contacts down there that could help Vicksburg grow their program.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you very much. And Judy?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. There's no question that career technical education impacts students very positively. I appreciate the conversation we've had because I too have some concerns about the long-term effects for individuals who go through career tech, receive possibly a credential at the end of 2 years, either from a community college or industry-based, and then what's the long-term 5-10 years out related to livable wage and their retention with that position or possibly other positions. I didn't know if under Perkins there was some sort of follow-up data that we might be able to, and I don't know whether Perkins requires that or not, where we're able to see how many students from a particular either graduating class or group of students, 5 years out or beyond, have either decided to go back to college or other training and go off in different directions, which is, probably certainly makes sense, or whether they're remaining in that career but possibly in different positions, because we know that the world's ever changing pretty rapidly, especially with technology, et cetera. So I was just wondering whether there was that follow-up at all.
So, with the Department of Technology Management and Budget, as well as we have an office in our agency that works on a system called the Workforce Longitudinal Data System. So this incorporates beyond Perkins, but it really looks to note the experience of a student from what we call cradle to grave. And certainly using wage record data, we can track and document a student's success from secondary to post-secondary to beyond to see if they're working and in what area of industry or what occupation or what field they are working in. So we have worked over the last 6 years to build that workforce longitudinal data system to be able to give that type of information.
I would be interested if we could see that at some point.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And if there aren't any additional comments or questions, we'll move on the agenda. We will be revisiting this topic at our April State Board of Education meeting when our team presents the Perkins 5 transition plan.
I just had one. Nikki, you jogged my memory when you were when you were talking about the pathway, and I guess for me, I think about myself starting off as with a degree in chemical engineering, and me being where I am now, I never would have thought of that. But it took me to get out of college to really realize that I didn't like smells. And at one time I wanted to be a doctor, but I don't like blood. So somewhere between, there's this happy medium. But and I also think about this generation who are more driven by social responsibility, and how are we making sure that we're making sure that our students are also finding that pathway where they may find themselves at a business, at a company that's more focused on people, maybe even, I think about the triple bottom line, people, planet, and then profit or finance, but that students are really driven by what their passion is and how are we drawing that out. And that goes back to my thought of making sure that we're looking at the well-being of the student and creating students who are adults that have some meaningful life at the end of their education, beyond just what's good for the employer, what's good for their paycheck, but how are we making sure that we're also providing that pathway for them as well.
And I believe that we work on that with our model of career development, beginning as I mentioned, in the elementary grades, progressing through the high school grades into our post-secondary institutions, as we work students through the career decision-making choice, and we start to expose them to a variety of options available to them. And each district does it a little bit differently at the local level, but I believe many of the school districts are working on that same goal that you described.
Thank you to our presenters for their presentation today, and thank you for the rich Q&A that we had following the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great day and a safe trip home.
Yeah, you too.
Moving on to our next item on the Committee of the Whole agenda, which is the presentation on the Parent Dashboard for School Transparency, Phase 2 updates. The Parent Dashboard for School Transparency went live in January of 2018 as a way to share information about schools that was easy for parents to understand. Since the launch last year, the team at the Michigan Department of Education and the Center for Educational Performance and Information, otherwise known as CEPI, they have been working on additions and improvements to the site based on the policy approved by the State Board of Education in 2017. Today, the team will share what has recently been added to the site. And joining us at the table for that presentation are Vanessa Kiesler, the Deputy Superintendent of the Educator, Student, and School Supports Division, and Chris Janzer, Assistant Director of Education Assessment and Accountability. Welcome.
Thank you, Sheila. So as Sheila said in her introduction, we wanted to provide the board with an update. This has obviously been a co-constructed enterprise from the beginning with the board, with our parent stakeholders, with stakeholders from around the state. And we have a major set of updates that have just come through. So today's presentation really focuses on that. I'm going to turn it over to Chris if he's ready.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to preload we're going to do a live walkthrough here in a bit, and it was being a little sluggish earlier, so I'm going to preload it so that we don't have to wait in a few minutes for it to load up. So so as Vanessa said, we're here to talk about the parent dashboard. We released our phase 2 pieces of it last month. We had a little bit of a preview window for the schools and districts to look at before it went public. So the preview started January 15th, and then it was out to the public on January 23rd. Over the last year, we've gotten over 1 million hits, visitors to the parent dashboard. And I was just told this morning that we had about 80,000 visits or page views to the parent dashboard this past January alone. I think people are mostly familiar with it. It's a broad sort of look at performance in every public school in the state. And you can consider it a new direction and accountability in terms of providing parents and other users or consumers of this data with sort of a broad overview of what's going on in their local school.
And in case you don't have a good metric for hits of websites put up by the state, 1 million is a lot. So it's a popular place for parents and other stakeholders to go, which is good. That was its intent, is to actually develop a tool that made people want to look at it.
Yeah. So just to kind of recap, the dashboard came about when we started doing our stakeholder engagement around the Every Student Succeeds Act, going on 3 years ago now. We heard a lot of suggestions that we move away from sort of the traditional accountability that is required under the federal law. And so this is sort of where the idea was born. It was requested by parents and other stakeholders. And this board actually came out with a policy in spring of 2017 that sort of laid the groundwork for this. So who created the parent dashboard? Again, a lot of people in this room, certainly MDE. The board had a role in, again, laying that foundation for this. We did a lot of stakeholder engagement with parents. I think over the last couple of years, we've had around 10 or a dozen or so focus groups comprised solely of parents to lead the design and development of this. And we couldn't have done it with some of our partners who I think are in the room, in the audience. Red Cedar Solutions Group is a local development company. They have done all of the programming around this. When you visit My School Data, they are the ones that actually made that website. And they were a big piece in the development and design of the dashboard as well. Public Policy Associates, they ran all of our parent focus groups and did a fantastic job with providing us analysis afterwards and things to consider. And then we also have several organizations within the state that helped out. The Center for Shared Solutions did all of the mapping work that our parents love. CEPI, they are our partners with My School Data, so they provided a lot of our project management expertise, and actually a lot of the metrics in phase 2 are collected by CEPI. And then the Department of Technology Management and Budget, those are the people sort of behind the scenes that make all of the magic happen with the data. They were the ones busy at work over the holidays, loading data and making sure everything was accurate. So, I actually had another slide that had names on it somewhere. Is it? Okay. Well, for those of you that had a part in the dashboard, do you want to stand up and we'll just recognize? All right. So again, our primary audience for the dashboard are parents and their families. Again, sort of a new direction for accountability. It's to encourage richer conversations about schools. Again, providing a lot of metrics that go beyond your traditional test-based accountability systems. When we were talking with parents in the development of this, we heard that they would use it for a couple of different reasons. To make informed decisions about their schools, and then also to compare school performance to similar schools either nearby or with similar characteristics. And what parents were really saying was they wanted to improve the way that their child learns and the ability of their school to serve their family, as well as having an easier way to research schools where their child might be attending if they were a new parent or new to the state. All right, so moving on, what have we done since last time we talked to y'all? We updated data, so the existing metrics we refreshed with data from the most recent school year. We added several new metrics for students and staff. So some of the new metrics that we'll be going through are more staff focused. As far as student metrics, we've added some student groups, namely gender, and then there are some existing metrics that you can filter in different ways now as well. One of the bigger changes is something that we are calling school services and offerings. Internally, we've been calling this points of pride, and it was something that we had done in the past and sort of took away, and now we're reintroducing as part of the dashboard. And what this is it's essentially what it sounds like. It's the things that schools do to serve their students and offerings. So things like sports, the arts programs, again, things that aren't typically shown in a graph. So these are things that if you're interested in what sort of AP classes a school might be offering, this would show that. We also enhanced the school search and mapping functions, which I will demonstrate here in a little bit. And the another thing that we really heard a lot about after our initial release last January was having the ability to actually see who the school's peers were. So if you remember, we had a line in the graph that would show how the school you were looking at compared to its peers, but that was the only information that we had. But we've expanded that now so you can actually click through, see a list of the peers, and then actually go and visit those peers as well. As far as metrics go, the ones in blue on this slide are the brand new ones that we've added. So again, mostly around staffing. Each of these includes up to 3 years of data, and it is at the school level of information. One of the things that I found exciting with the new staffing measures was you're able to filter them based on the different areas in that. So not necessarily by student groups, which we're all very familiar with, but for like qualified teaching staff, you can actually filter on the area in which you're interested in for being qualified. So that school services and offerings, again, these are all of the different areas that schools could voluntarily submit information to us. Our partners at CEPI collected this information, and we then put it on the parent dashboard. We had about, it was right around, I believe, 50% submission rate, and we're anticipating that will go up as people see this on the dashboard. This data, the school service and offerings data, schools are able to submit it 3 times a year, or they're able to submit it ongoing, and we refresh it 3 times a year. So if a class isn't offered in the fall semester and they didn't submit something to us in the fall, they can submit something now and we'll be able to show it later this spring. So what students are included on the parent dashboard? So we show all students in the school. And again, we have the very familiar, I think by now, ways of using the pull-down menus to show the different student groups. I mentioned earlier that we are now showing breakout by gender as well for some of the metrics where that is appropriate. Where does the information come from? So all of this is already collected in some manner by the state. Test data comes from the Michigan Department of Education. CEPI collects the bulk of the rest of the information. And then for, again, that new school services and offerings, it's submitted voluntarily. So it's not a required collection like some of the other things are. I'm going to kind of go through this one real quick here and talk a little bit about how the dashboard compares to other reporting that we do on schools. So again, I really want to emphasize that this was designed especially for parents with a lot of input from parents. So when we talk about our accountability systems, yes, we do get input from stakeholders, but it's not necessarily parent-centric. So this is really where we promote for parents to visit to get a picture of what's going on. It's not intended for high-stakes accountability use. Again, it's more of providing information to the public and parents, and it focuses on measures, again, that go beyond traditional school accountability. And the metrics, again, one of the focus groups, we looked at what parents felt was most important. And again, that was part of sort of the design process and what we were showing. The dashboard is part of a set of tools that we report on. So we do have a state report card that has a lot of the basic information that you see on the dashboard overview. It is an ESSA requirement. We have various budget and salary tools out there, both on My School Data, but also on the Michigan Treasury website. And there are lots and lots of other reports on My School Data that if you want to go into a deeper dive on something, it is all there. So users can still make suggestions. We have a survey out on the dashboard right now, and we also have an email box where we gather questions and feedbacks for potential enhancements later on. The team here in the department also worked on the creation of tools for schools and organizations to use as far as spreading the word on the dashboard and helping them answer questions from their local communities about the dashboard as well. And all of that is available on michigan.gov/MDE-parent dashboard. All right, so let me see if our school loaded up. Okay. So well, I can see it and it looks great.
We believe it.
I'm not getting anything. Yeah, I was just doing that. Okay.
Would you like to take questions while we figure out how to
Sure.
get
Yeah.
the display up? We
Okay.
could do that.
think
If
we're
there
gonna
are
go get some
questions on the material
technical
we
assistance.
presented.
I'm actually going to try and swap mine out. Okay. Because I have stuff on mine.
While we're waiting for the projection, any comments or questions from board members? Judy?
Thank you. I did have an opportunity to go in and, kind of navigate the site with the new information on there. I just want to commend everybody, those in the room also, for the ease in which I was able to find information. I think it's extremely helpful to parents, especially. There's lots of information out there in the media about shortage of teachers and that sort of information and qualifications of teachers, and to be able to fairly easily navigate for your own school district, right down to your own particular child's school. What's teacher retention, what's the qualifications of the teachers, et cetera, I thought was very helpful. So I just wanted to indicate that from this user's point of view, I thought it was good information to have and timely.
Thank you.
Yes, please, Nikki.
What are examples? You said it's certainly not high stakes. We've talked about how the goal is obviously for parents to disseminate information, which is why it's called the parent dashboard. But when you say high stakes, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so when I say high stakes, in a traditional accountability sense, that means there are some sort of additional supports or consequences in the old days. So like in the days of the AYP, and actually more recently with our top to bottom rankings, that would be a high stakes accountability system where the purpose of that system was to identify schools that were underperforming, and then they would be subject either to additional requirements or be eligible for supports either through technical assistance or grants, so fundings of different sorts. Whereas this is more of a, exactly, yeah. And so there is accountability with that as far as it does shine a light on schools that might be having, well, both challenges, but also are able to boast about something locally as well.
I locate the accountability determination at a different place. And that's one of the things we talked about with the board, is if a parent really is concerned about an educator metric that's on the dashboard, that might be something they'd want to talk about with their district or take up. But we don't say this is good or bad or something happens as a consequence of it. So it allows that more local and more parent level, first of all, information. Second of all, if they want to make judgment, they would make it on their own set of values. And so it's just a different type, but we would, like Chris said, the basic theory of action around accountability at the federal and state level for about 20 years has been this whole label and sanction. We're trying to move away from that into identify and support. This isn't about identification, it's about information to parents.
So And I don't quite know how to put into words what I'm thinking, so I'm just going to share. Is there anything in here? Literacy being one of our biggest issues in our state. You're saying traditionally the last 20 years we've considered high stakes like a label and sanction. From a kid's perspective, they want to learn to read, right? I'm assuming that from a core level they don't want to have literacy issues. So the stakes are high for them, right? If they are not going to a school that if it's impacted, right? So is there information in the parent dashboard, or where is the accountability for those kids to be served, if you will, and who is accountable for that? And so I guess first question is there information in the parent dashboard that empowers parents of students that are struggling with literacy, that gives them information to make the best decision for their child so that literacy isn't a long-term issue for them? Number one, from a parent perspective. But then from a systemic perspective, if we flip the high stakes idea on its head of label and sanction and say that the consequences really are sad for that child, those children, or that school, what do we do then? Where's the accountability, appropriate accountability, and how do we reframe our minds to understand that we have to take action on some level?
So those are really good questions. I will let Chris talk a little bit about how literacy is or is not highlighted in the dashboard currently. That doesn't mean we couldn't add a literacy view or an additional phase. So I'll let him talk about that question. Your second point about how do parents know if their child is behind in literacy and how do we ensure that, or in their acquisition of literacy skills. A lot of that has been supported under the investments in the Read by Grade 3 law, and then the investments that have come about as that. So the requirements to have more frequent diagnostic assessments, the requirements to communicate with parents if students are falling behind and have an individualized reading program. And then it's not a popular part of the law, but we are coming up on the part where there is if a child is more than a year behind, that there has to be communication to parents about that from the state level. That is in the current law. So I think a lot of the accountability for parents and schools mechanisms are built into the Read by Grade 3 law. And again, I will just flag those are up for debate. Not everybody likes those mechanisms, but that is where a lot of that so what accountability is handled. The dashboard wouldn't be the primary place for that, nor is it the primary student level reporting tool. We handle that through parent reports. Schools and districts handle it through Communications Home. And building out through the MyLearn system and the data hubs more parent portals to direct access to their students' progress. Those are really the places where a parent would get better information about their child's progress in reading. This is a school, they would be able to see here some elements of school level performance, but it wouldn't be the best place to understand how their child is doing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Chris, do you want to demonstrate for us, please, access to the portal?
Yeah, so I have a couple of schools loaded up here, and I have two loaded because I wanted to, one of the things that we worked on that we heard both the board say and also our parent feedback was the first iteration of the dashboard, metric-wise, was very high school heavy on the first page. And so here I have Pioneer High School in Ann Arbor loaded up. And this is the overview page here, and I'm gonna scroll down just a little bit. There's some new stuff up here that I'll come back to, but you might remember we had performance and progress, which are proficiency and growth on state assessments. You might be able to start teasing out some of the literacy stuff here because you can filter into like ELA and by student group and all that. But again, it is fairly broad at this level. But then if we scroll down farther, again, because this is a high school, we're seeing graduation rates, advanced coursework, and I believe we have post-secondary enrollment tests. So if under the first phase version of the dashboard, if we were in an elementary school or a middle school, we would see these charts on that school's dashboard as well, but they would be blank. And so we wanted to provide as much information as possible without being overwhelming on a school's dashboard overview. So on my other tab here, I have Tappan Middle School, I believe I'm saying that correctly, out of Ann Arbor. And if we scroll down here again, we see the same performance and progress. But then instead of the graduation rate, the advanced coursework, we are seeing some of the staffing metrics that parents felt were very important to them. And so these were sort of swapped out. Now, high schools have these as well. They're just not on their overview page. And then we also swapped out the post-secondary enrollment for qualified teaching staff here. So again, one of the changes, and again, it's subtle if you're not looking for it, is that we are providing as much information as possible on that overview, because we do know that not everyone spends a lot of time on the dashboard. So one of the things that was changed there. I'm going to scroll back up to the top now, and let me show you the, so we did add a couple of things to this white box that has some basic school information. The school type is new, so we are differentiating between a traditional school and a charter school. Again, this is something that we heard parents say were important to them. We are also showing the size of the student body for the school. And we have talked about enhancing this a little more, so you'd have like a pop-up chart or something like that to show the demographic breakdown as well. Also, this school website button, this used to say district website. Now, we changed the collection of this, and this is a CEPI thing where the state used to collect every district's website in the state. And we've changed that to being able to collect either a district or school website. It hasn't been highly publicized, and so very few schools have actually put their website in here. But we do have this capability now to provide a more direct link to a school's actual website instead of a district's website. I know this was something that the board had commented on in the past, and we did hear that in some of our parent conversations as well. So, and in case you're wondering, yeah, Ann Arbor, it does go to their district website, yeah. So that's something that we'll highlight that schools and districts are able to do in the coming months. So I'm going to click on school services and offerings for this middle school. Guessing this will be timed out too. Hopefully it's quicker on the search now. All right. Okay. So this is a school services and offerings page. We have a whole bunch of different categories and topics here. I'm just going to expand all in the interest of time so that you can kind of see what we have here. So again, we're looking at a middle school. So they are not offering any AP classes. But if we scroll down, the next category is arts. And the school did indicate that they are offering theater, art, and dance. If we go to the next category, out of school time programming, they again submitted a few of the things that they are offering for out of school time activities. There's no CTE at this middle school. They indicated some of the clubs that are offered in the school. We also look at comprehensive support services. Scroll down, we have music programs. There's a recess indicator. We have community partnerships, school-sponsored sports, and then services for different student populations. So we have English learner services as well as students with services for students with disabilities. And then rounding it out, we have a student mentorship program, and then world languages also offered at the building. So again, every school in the state has the ability to submit this information. We had roughly half, if I'm remembering correctly, submit this information. We're expecting it to go up as people become more aware of this. But again, this is kind of a nice thing for if you're not familiar with your local school, or if you're new to the area and you're kind of interested, hey, maybe your kid is interested in basketball or something like that, and you want to see if the school has a basketball team, you're able to actually look that up here without giving the school a call. So I'm going to go back now to overview. Okay. So one of the other things I mentioned was the peer comparison. And so if we're looking at this pink or magenta bar, you might remember that from our past presentations where these are the schools considered this this middle school's peer and how they're doing relative to, or how they're doing as a group. Before, that is all the information that we provided for that sort of a thing. However, now you'll notice that the average of similar schools is a link in the key of the chart. And if we click on that, hopefully, fingers crossed, that it'll load up the map view of this.
So that was the last thing Chris was going to demo. We can let it continue to work. Apparently it's computer's a little snowed in too on a snow day. Hopefully it'll come up you guys and you can see it. But were there any remaining questions just in the interest of time while we?
My question, and I'm not sure, and I've probably asked this question before, but the school suspension data that was going to be under the student behavior, where are we?
Yes. So we plan on the suspension data, that the metric that the team worked up combines suspension and expulsion data. We do plan to release it. We wanted to give locals a little bit more time to go in and look at it because it is the first time that they had seen the data. So we separated it from this release to do a separate preview and release it. And again, it's suspensions and expulsions combined. We are simultaneously beginning a really good cross-agency work group to figure out what sort of discipline metrics we'll want, and that this is a nice lead into the next presentation, hopefully, what sort of discipline metrics we might want to report on and where we'd want to report on them. The dashboard may not be the best place, or it may be good for some of them, but some of them might be more powerful at the district level or at the state level. So we have a team right now working in the data to look at some other possible metrics to think about reporting. So the suspension expulsion combined metrics are coming. We'll give everybody a heads up when the preview's open and you'll see those. They're not there yet, are they?
No.
No.
Nope.
So the data is available. It's
Yes.
being reviewed.
We wanted to give a little bit of preview time because it's brand new data for districts.
And we were not able to get that data broken down by subgroups.
Not at this time, but that's the analysis that we're doing. We know that is really probably some of the more powerful information. So at the present time, it shows a count of the suspensions, expulsions by school compared to the state average in similar schools, which is useful. The more useful will be this more extended report, and kind of like we said about literacy, as we build out, the dashboard might not be the eventual home for everything, but we know there are specific data views that are dashboard-like, even if they don't all go here, but that follow the same principles of the way it looks and feels and how you navigate, to help us get deeper into our more extensive questions. So discipline is one of those where we have a little bit now, but more coming soon, hopefully.
Thank you, Pam. And Michelle?
So how, over time, I know making sure that people update and do that is a difficult task. Is there any way for parents or people who look at the data who say, hey, this isn't accurate anymore, to contact MDE directly and say, this is not accurate?
Yeah, we've gotten, I would say, less than a handful of that actually last month when we first released. And it's sort of to the line of, hey, this isn't the superintendent anymore, or,
Yeah,
you know, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And we direct them, so there is a website basically that schools and districts can go to update that sort of directory information. And that would be then pushed out in the 3 times a year thing that we've got scheduled right now. So I think the next update will, I think it's scheduled for March, I want to say.
And if I was a parent, would I have a way to connect to let you know, the department or whoever, you know, that it's...
There is a help section on the dashboard.
But a parent can't go into this website and change the information.
No, but just to notify somebody that it's not accurate, it needs to be updated.
Yeah. There's like a dashboard help, there's a contact us thing, so they could email us through that. Yeah.
That might be just an easy way to kind of check.
Michelle? Any luck?
It's still spinning, I'm sorry.
Still thinking,
it was really
is it,
cool
huh?
too. I mean, go to myschoolsdata.org after you guys get home and check it out. I promise it is really cool.
Here's one more thing.
Yes, Michelle.
I think this is great. I'm just really proud of this. I think it's really useful, and I know it was not an easy task, and especially with all the input. But I think it's something that we should all be really proud of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to the team, and thank you for everyone who is here today. You have listened to the stakeholders, and you've created a site based on their input, and because of that, we're seeing that it's being used. So those 1 million clicks and then those 80,000 last month is very impressive, the use. And so you design it based on need, desires, and wants, and then it's being used. And so kudos to the team for your work in creating such a informative and useful and relevant site for parents.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Our next topic on the agenda today is the presentation on implementation of school discipline law. We have a team of presenters who have come to share information on the implementation of school discipline law. This presentation is an information item only, and board action is not required. We have 3 presenters. Perry Stone Palmquist, who is the Executive Director of the Student Advocacy Center. Is Charles with us today?
Just Perry today.
Just Perry?
Not the other people.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So we have Perry, who will be presenting to us today. Thank you, Perry, and welcome to the State Board of Education meeting.
And Kristen Totten is here on the phone from the ACLU of Michigan.
Welcome. Kristen is the education attorney at the American Civil Liberties Union of Michigan. Thank you, Kristen. And,
I wasn't sure if you guys could hear me, but this is Charles Hobbs, and I'm on the phone as well.
and Charles is here. We do have the entire team either here present or virtually. So Charles, senior staff attorney at Street Democracy. Thank you so much to all 3 of you.
Thank you. I'm glad I made it here. I am going to chat for a few minutes, and then Kristen's going to go through the PowerPoint, and then I'm going to share some of our recommendations, if that sounds good. So thank you for having us. I have come to this body many times over the past 17 years to discuss school discipline. Makes me feel really old when I say that, but it's been a while since I've been here, so I appreciate the chance to do so. It's been about 18 months since the new, what we call Rethink Discipline laws went into effect. Just a quick background, I'm the executive director of the Student Advocacy Center, which has been around since 1975 to help underserved students get back in school, stay in school, and find a path to success. We have offices in Ypsi and Detroit and Jackson, and we get calls from all over the state with our statewide helpline, which MDE advertises on their toolkit to implement the new laws. So we definitely got an uptick of calls after that happened. And I personally have studied school discipline since about 2000. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time today talking about the research around the harm of harsh school discipline, because I'm going to assume that you guys know that. So if you have questions later, we can go back to that, but that's my assumption today. And I'm also not going to spend a lot of time talking about what happened last school year, understanding that it was the first year of implementation. I could tell you plenty of alarming stories, but we're going to focus more on what we've been seeing more this fall. SAC was really honored to be together with ACLU of Michigan, Street Democracy, and several other organizations who are on the ground directly working with families to really understand what we're seeing with the implementation of the new laws. So we gathered last summer and then again in December to sort of share and then be connected on an ongoing basis, which has been awesome. So in summary, I can say broadly that our state has reduced the number of students expelled and the average number of days out for an expulsion, but I wouldn't say that we should start celebrating yet. I shared some quick data for you on that chart, but so we see about a 12% drop in expulsions, but still we are stubbornly over 1,000 still expelled. The length of expulsions has decreased slightly, but still averages 155 days, despite expulsions now being defined as 60 days or more. And I just want to say that this data is really limited, and since the new laws have passed, advocates have seen an increase in the use of 59-day suspensions, but suspension data is hidden currently, maybe not for much longer, in our public reporting systems. We have also seen an increase in unilateral placements to understaffed virtual settings, with a startling lack of due process. And once again, this is why we were founded. The students who need the most seem to be getting the least, and no one has to report that as an expulsion. So there are a number of trends that we've identified in our work. We continue to see outdated handbooks and lack of access to handbooks. General lack of knowledge and training about the laws. This includes a lack of understanding of how many days now constitutes an expulsion and what rebuttable presumption means. Just last month, I had to explain to a district that 100 days out was indeed an expulsion now. They couldn't just call it a suspension. Previously, before the law, we saw a lot of districts calling things 180-day suspensions, so they wouldn't have to report it as an expulsion. And our advocates never hear any decision-making body refer to the concept of rebuttable presumption. There continues to be an ongoing insistence that there are mandatory expulsions beyond the violations of the Federal Gun-Free Schools Act. The other thing we're seeing is a cursory consideration of the 7 factors, unless, of course, we're in the room. The 7-factor template that's used by most districts omits one of the 7 factors and is built as a checklist. To me, writing down age 15 does not demonstrate that you've considered how that age should play a role in the response to behavior, as one example. Printing out a student's entire discipline record from kindergarten to 12th grade doesn't help you identify patterns or how they've responded to different interventions. It doesn't really inform decisions to me. We have districts and charters tell advocates that they just won't consider the 7 factors at all. Recently, a board member argued to me that the 7 factors only applies to certain situations. I now just bring a copy of the law with me to hearings. And it's also important to mention that we rarely see or hear or are told of a 7-factor consideration for suspensions of less than 10 days, although the law does require it. There is a refusal to share with parents and students how the 7 factors were considered. And we know, frankly, that most parents and guardians they don't even know to ask, but those who do will call our helpline incredibly frustrated that their districts won't share that information. And frankly, they won't share it with us as partner advocates, despite many requests. We have to request it over and over again. And it seems as if they are scrambling to fill out that cursory checklist after the fact, rather than using it to help guide a decision, if that makes sense. That's just my impression. I could be totally wrong. There's a lack of understanding of lesser interventions and the persistent belief that lengthy removals remain necessary. That's still a persistent mindset that we see. SAC collaborated with several districts who don't see things that way to develop an extensive lesser intervention tool, which is available on our website. And we also have countless examples that have worked in all different discipline settings, situations. Yet we are still told things are too serious for a lesser intervention, or that a lesser intervention was considered but determined not appropriate without ever disclosing to the family or to us what was considered. Just a few quick case examples. A student with no high school discipline record was recently expelled for more than 100 days without consideration of the seriousness of the charge, without consideration of lesser interventions or restorative practices. We were told the infraction was too serious, even after we explained that another district would have suspended that student for 10 days. A ninth grader involved in a verbal altercation was expelled for the rest of the school year for persistent disobedience, despite our team lining up extensive community resources for him, and despite the district never trying positive interventions in the past. A 10-year-old fifth grader who spit at a peer, who spit at them first, not that that matters, was expelled for 180 school days for persistent disobedience without written consideration or discussion of the 7 factors. We were told at the appeal hearing that the student's behaviors were too dangerous to consider lesser interventions. There is a broad lack of understanding of restorative practices. We are often told again that situations are too serious, which if you know anything about the history of restorative practices and what very serious situations they've been used to address, it often leaves me speechless when I hear that. But it's often told, even in situations where the law explicitly says it should be the first consideration, right? And then there's and frankly, this part isn't new, but there's a general lack, continued general lack of due process. And I list some examples, but just 2 quick examples. Multiple students recently involved in a fight were told they had to attend the alternative virtual night school. And we had to request multiple times for a disciplinary hearing. Like, this is basic stuff under Goss v. Lopez. A 6th grade student was expelled for 180 school days, but the family wasn't provided written notice of the hearing and believed it was a re-entry meeting due to the student completing a behavioral health program, which was a condition the school indicated would allow the student to return back to school. The student never addressed the 7 factors. In closing, I'll say that we have seen great successes. Districts that used to, for instance, automatically expel for 180 days for, say, a fight, for instance, have dramatically reduced the number of days out. They've partnered with us to do other things, and it's worked, which is the key, right? So we know alternatives are possible and that they actually help get to the root of the problem, to repair the harm, and to prevent future wrongdoing, which is the point. So it's these successes for us that kind of push us forward, and I hope would for you as well, and help us want to think more creatively about how we can implement these laws more faithfully. And I'm going to share my recommendations, or our recommendations, in a minute, but I'm going to hand it over to Kristen to share a little bit about what she's seen in Flint, but also with special education, specifically students in special education. Kristen. Go.
Great. Thank you, Perry. So I just want to check, because I cannot see or be with you, unfortunately. Is the PowerPoint up?
Yes, yeah. It's up.
Great.
Got you.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and move on to slide 2.
Got it.
So a series of reports produced by the ACLU National analyzed new data from states as reported to the U.S. Department of Education, collected from all 96,000 public schools in the country. The focus was to track the 11 million days of school students lost due to suspension in the 2015-2016 school year. The ACLU of Michigan and its partners, such as the State Board of Education and also those that are present on our panel today, were aware of these trends and fought long and hard to end the zero-tolerance rules and obtain the 7 factors for districts to consider prior to suspending a student for 1 day. Our state average right now is 38 days lost, and the national average is 23 days lost. And I pulled out some Michigan civil rights data collection. These were just reported out as of April of 2018, and you can see the disparities between the different counties as to the number of days lost for every 100 students. And our concern is that without a model code of student conduct issued by the State Board of Education, funneling a child out of the learning environment is dependent upon not only what a district a child lives in, but the programs and policies that the individual building principal has adopted, such as principals that are aware of restorative practices and have embedded them within their district, if they're trauma-informed, if they understand the adverse childhood experiences and how they can manifest in behaviors. That can really lead to different treatment of students based upon where they go to school. We go to the next slide. This is a map, and for the bright yellow is 80-plus days missed for 100 students with disabilities. If we can move to slide 4. Students with disabilities, for every 100 students, you can see how kids with disabilities are even be treating more severely with suspensions, such as Luce County, 440 days are lost for students with disabilities, Kalkaska, 313, Genesee, 118. And our concern here is that the high rates, but now that that we have been recording the seclusion and restraint, which is now a prohibited practice under our law, unless it's an emergency, which must be reported, there are still high numbers being reported. And our concern is that these may be being used rather than the 7 alternatives prior to suspension. And I dove into some CEPI data just recently, and I want to draw out that Muskegon area ISD had over 1,571 seclusion and restraints. Macomb ISD was at 1,501, and this is for the 2017-2018 school year. Ottawa ISD was at 2,799 seclusion and restraints. These are all for children with disabilities. Washtenaw ISD was at 1,266, giving us a state total of 18,286 instances. That's 9,055 seclusions and 9,231 restraints used on children with disabilities in the 17-18 school year. And if we go to the next slide, the 7 factors were to be considered so that we could reduce the number of seclusion and restraints and also the number of suspensions and expulsions. And I list these out here for you all, if you are all very aware of them. But I want to focus specifically on number 3, which is whether or not the child has a disability. And if we can go to the next slide, some children have invisible disabilities. And I want to tell you a little bit about Dee. She's an 11-year-old girl who would like to have more girls as friends for sleepovers and hanging out. She used to like reading and was good at it, but now she's missed several days of school and has fallen behind. She is bright, she is beautiful, and she is traumatized. She had a difficult childhood history, having been placed in the foster care system at the age of 2 due to neglect of her and her brothers. She has been adopted into a loving home, but she is now in a secure home environment, but she struggles with her trauma. She has been diagnosed with PTSD, ADHD, and DMDD, dysregulated mood disorder, disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, and exhibits challenging behavior both in home and at school. She receives mental health services out in the community and is participating in trauma therapy. Her mother has tried to get her appropriate educational services, first at Linden Charter Academy, then at New Standard Academy, but both places used disciplinary removals and threats of expulsion to respond to her challenging behavior. Her mother would be told that she had to remove Dee or else face an expulsion. So in early December 2017, her mother enrolled her in a local public school district, which was the only one that would take her. In less than a week, the district suspended her for the first time, a pattern that continued for the entire rest of the 2017-2018 school year. At the mother's request, the district evaluated her for special education, but failed to apply proper standards and found her not eligible. The district created a Section 504 plan, but instead of providing her with appropriate individualized behavior support, the district continued to respond to her mental health-related needs by suspending her. They also put in place counseling services for her, but they didn't have a counselor on staff that could fulfill that role. By the end of the 2017-2018 school year, the district had suspended her for more than 74 days. As of now, in the 2018-2019 school year, she has been excluded from school for over 94 days. Never once were the 7 factors mentioned to her mother to be considered prior to suspending her. If we can go to the next slide. When a child has a disability, we want districts to pause to see and consider any adverse childhood experiences that the child may have, and also toxic stress. Even if there was a bit of inquiry, they could have figured out that she had been adopted from a neglectful home that would cause her to have triggering aspects of trauma and fight or flight consistently throughout the school day. Because it takes a stressful event, and kids will internalize that distress, and they will hold on for however long they can until they get some intervention, an adult to see them and be able to bring in the help that they need. Or neglect can lead to a disability, and we are seeing this happen within districts. And when a kid can only hold on for so long, then they will either act out or they will shut down. And these also lead to depression, anxiety, PTSD, ADHD, and that disruptive mood dysregulation disorder that I spoke of previously. If they act out, like throwing a desk, well, we have the criminal justice system that we see children being funneled into. And if they shut down and put their head down on the desk, then we have a mental health system that's absorbing these children, but they need to be remaining in school. So we need to get upstream. And in May of 2014, the State Board of Education issued a policy on reducing suspensions and expulsions based on mounting research that safety and educational outcomes can be improved by increasing prevention efforts that focus on social emotional development, connection, and community building while providing tiered mental health and other supports. We need to make sure that every district has the capacity to implement these in a robust way. We move on to slide 8. Early intervention is needed. Nationally, across all K-12 schools, the average student-to-school counselor ratio is 464 to 1. What is recommended is 250 to 1 school counselors. Michigan's ratio is 700 to 1. We are missing our opportunity to meet these children upstream and resulting in disabling conditions for them. If we go to the next slide, we see how this plays out on a national level, such access that's hindered in Michigan for children with disabilities and children of color. Rather than ensuring that adequate social workers, school psychologists, and school counselors are in place within our school districts, we are overutilizing police in our public schools. In Michigan, number of counselors, like I said, is 700 to 1. As to children with disabilities, teachers are often most challenged by students in crisis or with special needs because of a disability or trauma. When there are no other resources at hand, teachers request help from law enforcement that are right there in their building. As a result, we are seeing an increase of students of color and students with disability being more frequently criminalized. Students with disabilities nationally make up 12% of students, but 28% of school arrests. Students with disabilities are nearly 3 times more likely to be referred to police, and Michigan school arrest for Black girls is 8 times higher than for white girls, placing us as one of the highest in the nation for this disparity ranking, right up there with Virginia. If we go to our next slide, slide number 10, you can see that there's a percentage of students attending schools with cops but no counselors. In Isabella County, we see 47.2% of kids that are attending school with cops but no counselors. Oscoda, 73.5% are seeing this. And there is an interactive map on the link that I provided in the PowerPoint right at the beginning, so that you can go and explore other counties if you're curious as to what's happening there. If we go on to slide number 11, I just want to pause briefly here because kids are, they act out too when they're having ineffective instruction. And I just want to bring this to the state board's attention because we have a crisis in Michigan in regards to making sure that our kids that are really struggling are getting the explicit direct instruction that they need. Whole language models are not always working for kids with disabilities and kids with dyslexia and also kids that just have constant fluctuation of teachers coming in and out of their building. Subs are oftentimes used to staff, and what is the curriculum that they're having access to. So I encourage those of you on the board, there's a great podcast that is through the Educate podcast that really breaks this down in regards to why our kids are not being taught to read, because kids will act out and have these behavior disruptions. As I mentioned about Dee, she was a child that loved to read, but then she fell behind and she acted out in a way that had her excluded from school without lesser interventions being provided. If we go to number 12 of the slide, one thing that the State Board of Education can do in order to make sure is, one, adopt a model code, and Perry will get into that a bit more, but also the MARS rules. I looked at the Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education, and I looked for the discipline rules that they have there. On page 166 of MARS, the rules state that there are no Michigan rules for discipline. And it was updated in February of 2018. So we need to make sure that general education and special education is not siloed from one another. That has led to a lot of disparities. And we need to make sure that the third factor of the 7 factor directly relates to children with disabilities, and they are general education students first, and they're entitled to the same protections. Please insert the 7 factors into the MARS section for discipline, which is a way that the State Board of Education could really help assist us in regards to making sure that those are adopted. So I will pause now and thank you for your attention.
Thanks so much, Kristen. That was great. And I could certainly share some stories about some MDR meetings and things like that that we've been to, that when we bring up the 7 factors, there's just like confusion. So it's definitely, in our experience, hasn't been embedded into the special education processes yet. So this is important. So we have 6 recommendations and that we'd like to share with you. We've touched on several of them, but the first is to develop an expedited process to revise the state's model code of conduct to incorporate changes to the school code regarding discipline. We know that, I know that I submitted public comments a while back. I don't know what happened to those. I should have saved them, but I'm not sure where they are. But I guess my hope is that the changes that were submitted could be incorporated, but that because some time has passed, that there would be a chance, now that we've seen what's happened on the ground, to maybe have an expedited chance to get some additional feedback perhaps. But I think it's gonna help. There's just a lot of states or a lot of districts that have not revised their code. We are asking you to consider to partner with us to request an Attorney General's opinion on what is required for districts to comply with the Rethink Discipline laws and basic due process rights outlined in the Supreme Court decision Goss v. Lopez. As Kristen mentioned, we'd like you to work with MDE to revise MARS to incorporate references to the new state discipline laws, including consideration of the 7 factors before any removal and documented consideration for removals over 10 days. It was interesting what presentation just came before here, because we were going to ask for expand data collection transparency regarding discipline. When I look at my recommendations that I used to have like 17 years ago when I would come to you, it always says that, and yet here we are still. The only way to get suspension data is to wait for OCR every other year or to FOIA every single district, and most parents don't have time to do that. So we think that the parent dashboard should include both expulsion and suspension numbers and rates, and that expulsion data should be more easily found on myschooldata.org, perhaps in the student counts report. You kind of have to know where to find it. Thankfully, I have that bookmarked, but other folks don't. And like I said, suspension data really needs to see the light, especially with the definition now of what expulsion and suspension is. But I personally believe, and I believe this for a long time, that we will be astounded when we really see how many students are missing school because of suspensions. It's astounding. I would love for this body to consider passing a resolution indicating that Michigan will continue to rely on the 2014 federal guidance to public schools related to the administration of school discipline, despite the fact that federal guidance has been rescinded. So this is something that different bodies are doing around the country to take a stand and say, yes, we believe in this guidance and we're going to follow it regardless. Washington Intermediate School District recently passed, and it would have a template, and I could also share National Dignity in Schools campaign also has a template, so we're happy to help support the board if that's something that you're interested in doing. And then last, I think, which is probably the hardest maybe, but for this body to provide some leadership on the new laws, lesser interventions, restorative practices, and investments in trauma-informed approaches. I will say that at the annual statewide School Justice Partnership Conference in Traverse City every year, these great programs are presented and people get really into it, but there's not the resources or the leadership to say, this is what we're gonna do. And so I just think we need more leadership in the state about what to do instead. And I think targeted regional trainings would also be helpful. So those are our recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, just really appreciate your time and attention today. Thank you.
Thank you to Perry.
Yeah.
And to Kristen on the phone, and I know, Charles, you're also on the phone. So at this time, we'll open the comments or questions from board members, please. Pam?
My first question, thank you for this presentation and the information that you shared. It's compelling as well as convicting. So thank you for bringing this to us and encouraging us to move with great speed to address these issues. My questions are the data that you provided, and thank you for that data. And we look to get more at our fingertips as well. The data that you showed as it relates to students with disability, that is compelling in and of itself. I guess one of the questions I have are you able to tease out which of those districts have a greater number of students with disability? Have you already teased that out?
Kristen, I think that's a question for you, maybe.
Yep, that's right. Thank you, Pam, for that question, Ms. Pugh. So there is a way to do it through my school data to look and see what districts. So on number 3, which of my slide, this is an interactive map, and I'll make sure that everyone has the link. The link is on slide 2, and if you click on that, then you're able to go in and interface with it. So based upon Gwinnett County, we can also track then through my school data how many children are represented within that district as having disabilities, but that comparison hasn't necessarily been done. It's just recording as to the 80 plus days missed per 100 students with disabilities.
Okay, and then some of my other questions, the data on the Black girls is startling, and I would imagine that would be even more startling if we looked at Black boys, being that across the country that is a population that is expelled. We see expulsion and suspension at a much greater rate. Do we have access to that data? Or do you have access
Yes.
to that data? I mean, I was
Yes.
just wondering if you can show that data.
Absolutely. We can share that. The reason that I featured this one is because of Michigan being one of the highest in the country for this rate, but I am happy to share that data with you. And through that interactive link, it does track not only, these are reports that had to be given to the U.S. Department of Education from every district. So they also had to report out on Black males as well. So we do have that data, and I'll make sure that that's provided as well.
And then
one thing.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to follow up with that question. One thing that I was concerned, and because CEPI is there, perhaps they can address this, is that when I was looking at the suspension, the restraints and seclusions of children with disabilities, it didn't track it by race, only by disability or non-disability. And I wondered if there was another way that we could also track that to make sure that we are capturing that as well. And perhaps, Stephanie, when they do the discipline data, the suspension expulsion that will be being released, those discipline matrix, if we could make sure that we're tracking by race, disability as well, English language learners, and free and reduced lunch, or those in poverty, that would be wonderful to be able to track that and be able to see how they're being impacted.
Okay, because that was going to be my next question. So you were not able to get the race data either. You could only get disability data.
As to the restraints and seclusion, that's correct.
Okay, and just a few more thoughts, the superintendent, Derek Lopez, who I hope that we get to hear from because he speaks to the whole child. And I remember when he was first getting to Flint, he's just been there since the first semester. And he talked about a parent-teacher conference, or actually it was a child that's getting ready to be suspended or expelled. And he stopped and he paused and he just asked a few questions. I mean, maybe even one question. How's your day going? And all of this, it snowballed into all of these issues. And so the teacher was able to hear this and they were able to come up with another plan. So, I think when we have these thoughts about, or these approaches of addressing the whole child, I wholeheartedly recommend or commend the department for moving in that direction, but also wanting to hear from some of the districts on that. One of the other pieces that I'll just bring up that was an intriguing and interesting piece of data, remarkable to me, was that and in the city of Flint, they've gone to one high school. And so in talking to police, they're talking about at a time when they're losing the ability to build relationship with students because the police in the schools has dwindled. But at that time, they're seeing more visits to the school from like 3 per week to 7 per day. Or I shouldn't say visits to the school, but there are more instances where schools are seeing activities that weren't there before the closures of schools. So I mean, I think looking at some of those things as we look at these high stakes decisions that we're making on school closures and the impact that it has in some of these districts that then perpetuate some of these activities as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pugh. That's really good it's good to hear about Dr. Lopez and how that's being responded to. And we'll also be we do have some data in regards to police involvement, and we are very concerned about police in elementary schools specifically, but it is concerning.
Vicki?
I just want to say thank you. The spirit that you guys are operating out of is definitely commendable. I feel like just the overall goal of reducing violence and bringing safety and stability to our schools is really key. One of the things, and thank you for your conversation on disabled students, I would also like to draw some attention to another area of this discussion, which I'm sure you guys have probably had discussions. And when you bring up these types of statistics too, I think it's important to look at the big picture. I just drew some quick data from SAMHSA.org talking about childhood sexual abuse being a big part of background trauma, if you will, that these girls are coming to school with. So it just talks about how one in 7 girls will come to school having been sexually abused as a child. And then there's other data along down here, 1 in 4 even during high school. And then it talks further about the risk factors that African American girls are twice as likely to be victims of sexual assault. So I'm just wondering if we have appropriate focus in this area. They're coming to school with that trauma. They're probably acting out because they don't have safety and stability at home or even at school, I would say, because I wonder if some of, just a question, not an attack, but within the total students expelled, are we including sexual assault as part of those expulsions? And how do we make that statement that it's not okay? It's not acceptable. How do we challenge the trauma that they're coming to school with? And it's not that boys aren't affected. It talks about 1 in 25, but 1 in 7 is very different than 1 in 25. So, and then just to kind of correlate that with your data that you're talking about and overall violence and expulsions, I just want to make sure too that we're really honing in on this very, very, very important discussion. We've talked a lot about it on the state level, the national level, in a number of different arenas. But I just really feel like assault in general is something that how do we both reduce expulsions, provide safety and stability, and really tackle this issue in the home and at school. So I don't know if that is valuable information or discussion, but I just feel pretty passionate about it.
This is Kristen, if I could just jump in very quickly. That is highly valuable, and thank you so much for raising it. And I just want to say that, that goes to the adverse childhood experiences, and we need to be screening for those. We need to be making sure that we're getting ahead of the issue, as I demonstrated about the internal stress, the stress that kids are holding on to. And at the the Michigan School Justice Partnership training that Perry had mentioned that took place back in November, there was a wonderful presentation given by Dr. David Reed Johnson from New Haven, Connecticut. And he runs a PTSD clinic, and he's put into place this Alive program. And it's one way just to screen for the kiddos that are struggling with sexual assault and other issues. He did a study in which New Haven with 800 kindergartners, and we found that 50% were rated by their teachers as being model students, but had been exposed to high levels of stressful events such as physical and emotional abuse, neglect, and traumatic loss. These stresses would normally go unaddressed until some of the children's behavior broke down in the years to come. Kids will hold on for so long until we give them the means. So we really would love for the State Board of Education to lead districts to saying we need to get ahead of this toxic stress that kids are coming into their classrooms with, and we need to make sure that the children are being seen and heard, and that we're acknowledging the harm that has been done. We're asking direct questions, and we're providing them with the support they need, because toxic stress is the #1 barrier to academic achievement, work readiness, and avoidance of the criminal justice system. To answer your question, not enough has been done in this area, and we need to really make more robust efforts there.
Thank you. I have Tom and then Michelle.
And I'm sorry, we're kind of tight on time. I hope that we can maybe make sure that this, maybe not every month like we do with the partnership districts, but maybe every month, but at least regularly, we need to put this before us. And I appreciate all that's been done by the people that have worked on this. I'm a fierce advocate of local control, but in areas like this where the incentives may not be there to do exactly what's right necessarily, I certainly am fine with the state stepping in. What about penalties? I mean, you know, are you all advocating for, you know, if it's proven that you are not doing this, and I don't know what the steps are to, you know, then you get money withheld or you get some kind of penalty. I mean, that's one thing I guess I was wondering about that.
Well, I won't.
If I could add to that, Perry.
Sure. We could both add to it.
Yeah.
But
So
you go first.
that's the unfortunate situation that we're in, is that there are no enforcement powers outside of judicial review. That, you know, these complaints that, because I have represented dozens of kids at their suspension expulsion hearings, and each time it's a different procedure from the school district. And then when we think that we, you know, have the school district's procedures down because of our experience, they get changed. And this, what happens is that these parents and students just don't know what's going on. There's no, you know, notice of what, you know, a written notice of what the allegations are. There's often confusion about what exactly the meeting that schedule is going to, you know, talk about, what the purpose of it is. And to answer your question in short, is that there is no enforcement power there, and outside of that judicial review.
I'm a social worker, so I try to be strength-based in my approaches, but I have talked to some legislators in the past about that idea, but my thought would be rather than take away per pupil aid, which makes sense because I'll pause and say it doesn't make sense what's going on, right? So like you have one district who's saying, we're gonna do everything we can to keep these kids in school, and they're gonna get the same amount of money with this district who expels a student, and they're continuing to get money for the student until the next count day. But what I'd rather see is incentives for the districts that are keeping their suspensions and expulsions low. And, you know, districts like Ann Arbor, for instance, would be a great example. And my kid goes there, so I'm slightly biased, but they have made a deep commitment, and they do partner with us. And there's other examples too, but they're really trying hard to be creative about not suspending it. So we know it can be done. That's the thing. If I thought that this was it's not an easy task, but it's not an impossible task either. Yeah.
Thank you.
Michelle?
And I'd just like to I'm sorry, I just want to say Kalamazoo Public Schools has also put in restorative practices and has shown a decrease in their suspension expulsion as well. So I'm biased there. That's where my kids go, but pleased to see that districts are getting ahead of the issue.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kristen. Michelle?
Yeah. I just want to mention, I the beginning of the school year, you know, I'm fostering an 11-year-old, and he's had some trauma in his life as well. And great kid, just, you know, and I felt and I had the same experience where I went in and I was like, I didn't want to tell him I was on the state board of ed, and, you know, I didn't want to pull that card. I was like, well, how about the 7, you know, have you gone through the 7 steps? And they kind of, is it part of, I want your code of conduct, is it in there? And they were saying, oh, we don't have to follow that. It's a similar kind of pushback, and so I had to say I was on the state board of ed. And, but I mean, it was, this rings really true to me. What you're saying is that people are not. It's just not on the radar, or it's not. And I think there's so many demands on our schools, but my thing is that the other parents are the ones who are calling for the strict. So the education has to incorporate not just, you know, it's you know, the leaders of the school, or it's, you know, it's the parents who are saying, I want a safe school for my kids, because otherwise they're going to just take their kid and go to another school. You know, it's they shop around, and so if they don't have, you know, So there's this incentive, if it's not perceived as safe, or if the kid is acting out and dangerous, that they'll leave, and then that affects the money, and then so I think it's a large systemic issue and problem, and not, I don't think it's just like bad actors. It's a whole thing. Yeah, it's a lot of things that are enforcing, or that are in play here, that I think need to be addressed.
I think I've really been impressed with how some districts have decided to have community conversations, like what are our values as a community and how do we want to handle these things. And so that's one of the things I always recommend as a first step, like talking to your parents and your teachers, because forcing things doesn't actually work in a sustainable way. But other states, suspension or expulsion doesn't necessarily mean you're out of school and you never have a right to come back. Our state's kind of unique, I think, in that way, but this is our job as adults, is to educate these students. So even if they do something really bad, and that's a small percentage of those kids, don't we want them to have an education so they don't end up in the criminal? So either way, I think we need to have a continuum.
Right.
But there are a lot of situations where it's not that serious, and with the right support. But that's the key. You can't just you can't just suspend and put him back. That doesn't work, or just put him back.
Right. And then we worked it out where it was an in-school suspension, and I mean, he had a sewing needle, and they said he was stabbing kids with a weapon, and it was a sewing needle, and he poked 2 kids with it anyway. But it's a whole other. That's a whole other. But we worked it out, and we kept them in the school, and we did the restorative justice, and it worked really well. So I think I think educating parents too about what these things are is really important. And I live in Detroit, and sometimes getting parents to come to, they're working a lot of times, and the attendance at the parent teacher conferences is not very great in some of the higher poverty areas where there's just a lot of stuff they're dealing with, and they might not necessarily have a flexible schedule to attend a 9 to 5 meeting. So, I just wanted to add that 2 cents. And I also know that there are some resistance from teachers who have large class sizes and don't have the resources, and there's no substitutes, and how do you actually make it work? So that where people would be disposed to doing it, but there's these structural barriers that make it difficult to do. So I think I am absolutely committed, and I think your recommendations are great. I would like to see what we can do as the board, and talk about maybe with Kyle or whoever we need to see about revisiting our code of conduct, and revising the Marsh codes as well to incorporate these things. I think we should move on these, and I would like to see us come together in the next couple of months, and I'm willing to be involved in that and do whatever I can to help support it. So anyway,
let us know what we can do to support.
Yeah.
Anything we can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Another question I would have for the department, again, in light of the U.S. Department of Education's proposal, I don't know where that is, of rolling back the civil rights standards or pieces that are at the U.S. Department of Ed that were put in place by the Obama administration. How will that affect the work that we're doing? Have we gotten any information, guidance on that?
Turn to Kyle. We have not, Kyle shaking his head, we have not received any guidance on
So
how
I
to
would
proceed.
hope that would not impact whatever we're looking to do. I would be more than happy, at least, especially item number 5, to take that forward to our legislative committee and move that forward. But I would hope that none of the recommendations here and some of the items that Michelle has brought up would be impacted by that. I hope here at a local level we would still be able to ensure that we're protecting and closing those gaps of expulsions and suspensions versus opening ourselves up for those to be widened. And then the other thing, I mean, just again, just the resources that are needed to put some of the mechanisms in place to do some of this work. We've watched it. We've seen it be put in place in some districts, and I'm hoping that we will soon see the benefits of that.
And this is Kristen with the ACLU of Michigan. We would be honored to assist with that effort. We think that's very important that we follow the 2014 guidance and that that's not revoked or changed.
Thank you to Perry and to Charles and to Kristen for your really data-rich presentation on a very complex but also compelling topic. And to the Board of Education for their willingness to review the recommendations that were presented today and to continue to have this conversation, because the goal is to keep kids in school. Because by keeping them in school, they're getting the education that they need that will allow them to be successful. And suspension and expulsion denies them of that education. So I look forward to having more conversation on this topic in the future. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the Committee of the Whole agenda is discussion regarding criteria for grant programs. Do any of the board members have questions for staff regarding criteria?
Well, I do, but I can wait. We're kind of late, so I can wait till it comes up as on action, the action item, if that's okay.
It's okay with me.
Okay. All right. Seeing no questions or questions being put on hold until the action item, we'll now move into the regular meeting of the State Board of Education. The time is now 12:25 p.m. and a quorum of the board is present. The State Board of Education meeting of February 12, 2019 is called to order. May I please entertain a motion to convene to closed session as allowed by the Open Meetings Act?
I move that the State Board of Education meet in closed session to discuss material exempt from discussion or disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act, specifically to consult with this attorney regarding trial or settlement strategy.
Okay. I have a motion by Cassandra. Do I have?
Support.
I have support by Tom. Marilyn, will you take the roll call?
Yes. Fecto?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Ramos Montini?
I cannot vote, but I have to be physically present.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And Snyder?
Yes.
Tilly?
Yes.
Albridge?
Yes.
Passes. Okay, the motion passes. The board will reconvene in open session.